Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegreywolf.com. Following up a whopper of a weekly Wringer last week with the hour-long plus episode of the weekly Wringer. That will not happen frequently, I assure you, although I was glad to see a lot of the encouraging compliments from many of the folks that posted this week about there was a lot to talk about, and we really probably could have kept going, and there was a lot more to get into that we didn't even have time for. So, it's always good to have a great topic, and I think that's part of what makes the weekly Wringer great. But I've always pictured it as being a little bit shorter than that. But it's good to have a really good, long conversation every once in a while, although maybe an hour is a bit excessive. So I'm not sure we'll see any more of those anytime soon. Again, thanks to all of you who did say, though, that you enjoyed the longer format, thought that there was a lot to talk about. We're very glad that you enjoyed the video, as always. So if you have any other encouraging words, please feel free to forward them to me as well, because those things are great in terms of kind of knowing what you guys are looking for. And as we will see in a little while, because of the many things we have to do today, I always am open to suggestions. So please send all of your suggestions to me in either email, commodore128@clanofthegreywolf.com, or you can send me a private message via the site, and I will respond with as much, I guess, urgency as I can muster, as I am yet a busy man. All right, so what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about the question that I asked you from last week for this week that has to do with Star Wars in 3D, which I'm sure all of you are just wonderfully excited about. There was a great conversation about this. It's going to be significantly shorter of a conversation because I think most of you probably already know what I'm going to talk about, especially those of you that watched the Echo Screen Live this past week. From time to time, I see the Weekly Wringer and the Echo Screen overlapping in terms of some of the content that gets covered. It's a natural progression, folks. It's going to happen. So we're going to talk about that question. I'm going to go through a couple of the thoughts that you guys gave that I thought were particularly good. I will give you, as I always do, my own opinion about this, and then we will go into a question for next week that should have you talking about video game genres, which I think should be an awesome conversation. All right, so last week, at the end of the very, very long episode, I asked you a very simple question. Were you interested in going to see the Star Wars movies in 3D that get re-released in 3D? Now, right now, only The Phantom Menace has been re-released in 3D, I should say. And the plans, I would only assume, are to currently take the prequels and make them into 3D movies. But as many of you talked about in the forums, in this particular video, commenting on the video in the comment section, I would not be surprised at all that they're going to do every single one of the Star Wars movies, including the original three, in 3D as well. I can see that happening depending on how 3D kind of lasts and promotes its own commercial viability in the future. Although, if they do or they don't, neither way would surprise me, but at this point I think it's probably almost a sure thing they're going to release those movies in 3D. So just hold on to your seats. So before I jump into that, though, I do want to mention, as I do through as many videos as I possibly can, I want to mention all the new folks, because we had a lot of new people commenting this week. A lot of you that had been watching for a long time and decided to brave it, get into the comment section. Nothing wrong with that. We love to have you a part of the conversation, but there's also nothing wrong with being one of the sideline folks just watching and enjoying the Weekly Wringer. I love all of my viewers, whether they happen to be people that comment or not. Comments do keep the show going, though, so we need to have those, and that's why I'm really glad to welcome all these new commenters, some of whom actually just kind of stumbled upon the series. So we're great to have all of you. That being said, we want to welcome this week Unseasonably. Welcome to you. Particularly fond of the conversation from last week with Girl Gamers. Love to have you and all of our female commenters on board. Welcome to you. The Lord of Nothing. Actually, it's just Lord of Nothing. I probably shouldn't add extemporaneous, these on there as I move through these conversations. But in any case, Lord of Nothing, awesome name. Almost like the goth kids from South Park. That's what it reminds me of. With the most creative and interesting name of the week, we've got Swellington J. Tips. I wonder if there's an implication there. I say with sarcasm. Welcome to you as well. Great name. And then we've got Gamersaur. I thought that was a pretty cool name. Without a dinosaur as an icon, which I thought was interesting. And so welcome to you. And last but not least, Silverblade 18, which is an awesome name. I guess I'm going out slaughtering lycanthropy anytime soon. But in any case, Silverblade 18, welcome to you. Welcome to all of you into the Weekly Wringer. It's great to have you. So, what were your answers to the question of last week? Well, there were many. But here's what I want to say at the top. I'm not going to go into a lot of what people say because it was a lot of repetition. But I will say this. In terms of the vote, the overall vote, here's how I tallied it last time I went through. It was 16 of you said you were not going to go to see the movie versus 4 of you that said you were either going to see them or you were interested in seeing them. So that's, if 20 people responded, that's almost perfect in terms of 75-25 split, almost perfect. But I think that's probably indicative if you look at how many Star Wars fans have probably actually watched this movie. See, the Weekly Wringer has statistical significance beyond just the confines of the comment section, folks. That's very exciting. So, in general, you guys all probably are not going to be gearing up and ponying up the cash to go see the Star Wars movies in 3D. And I don't think I'm probably tipping my hand too much to say I can't blame you. But for those 4 of you out there, there's some arguments to be made there as well. Let's talk about them. Alberto Me talked about that 3D is really kind of a cheap trick for, taking the revisions of the old movies. That's almost goes without saying. But I think it's a good point, and I think it's one that needs to be repeated here. We've got movies that have been out for a long time now. With the prequel movies now, we're enjoying 10 years since they've been released. And with the original films, we have many, many more years since then. The first one came out in the late 70s, so I mean, we've obviously had a ton of time to dwell on those films. Although, again, I'm not sure they're going to remake those. But how do you squeeze more revenue out of old movies? Well, you reinvent them or re-release them in some kind of way with a gimmick. And in this case, 3D tends to be the gimmick du jour because almost everybody in today's day and age is remaking movies in 3D. I don't know why, but they're doing it. What I think is also interesting about Alberto's comment that I thought warranted mention and was something that was repeated by many of you is that I think this is an indication in some ways of the stagnation of Hollywood. While I certainly don't think it's representative of the stagnation of the creative output of the Hollywood community, because I think there are wonderfully talented and creative people in Hollywood making wonderful movies. It is indicative of the kind of Hollywood machine that things are getting, major revisions rather than making new movies, which is exactly what Alberto Me is talking about, which is, why not new movies? Why aren't we venturing out into new movies? Well, that's a statement about the market of movies in general and about the market of 3D movies, because 3D movies, folks, are very, very lucrative, in case you didn't know. So even if they get a fourth of the audience, as per our statistics, if they get them to come see the 3D movie, they can make a lot of cash. Whereas before, re-releasing a movie probably wouldn't net you nearly that much cash. But a 3D movie absolutely does. Moving right along, Mog talked about the idea of going to see these movies solely because of the concept of children. Now, we tacked this comment a little bit on the Weekly Wringer, and I won't spoil all of that, by the way. If any of you enjoy the commentary of the Weekly Wringer, you should definitely check out the Echo Screens, which happen twice a month. They don't happen, I would say they happen every 2 weeks, but that's not perfect. They happen bi-monthly. And you should just check out some of the archived episodes if you think that is something of enjoyment that you might be possibly enjoying on here on the Clan of the Grey Wolf. And I'd love to see you all as part of the common, I guess, commenters and common visitors to the site for the Echo Screen Live as well. Anyway, Mog talked about the idea of going to the movies because of the children. You know, there are children that we are having now. Some of us are old enough to have our own children. That's one of the reasons why the Clan of the Grey Wolf exists. It's something where folks our age can get together and speak about a lot of these comments and a lot of these topics that we have here in the Clan of the Grey Wolf. So, if you have children, you might be going to take them to see this movie or any of the movies that get re-released, because this could be a chance for them to see Star Wars in the theater, which is a genuinely novel experience. I will absolutely admit that fact. I think that's a good point. And I don't have children of my own, so I can't make a comment about that except to say that what I would do if I had my own children, and I can't say with any degree of high certainty, because I think while I could sit here and tell you that there's no way I would ever allow my children to go see those films in the theater or take them to see those films in the theater, worse yet, I have to tell you that at the other end of a small child smiling at you begging to see a George Lucas movie, I have to say I might capitulate a little bit more quickly than I am letting on right now. In other words, it's easier to say than do. So I have respect for you, Mog, for taking your children and wanting to spread the joy of Star Wars in any way that you possibly can. And I don't think, as much as I want to berate you for such a thing, I can't see any shame in that game. All right, moving right along. Drastic made a really interesting point. Now, while Drastic definitely votes a big fat no on this one, what I think is really interesting about the comment is that, and what I do want to talk about, is that it's getting impossible to talk Star Wars anymore. Now think about that for a minute. Because I wasn't thinking about that before I read that comment, and I thought, this is more just, vitriol about Star Wars, and all of you folks that hate George Lucas so much, and you're just, you got your panties in a... and then I started thinking about it. I said, you know what? Maybe he's right. I mean, when was the last time I sat down and had a great, intelligent conversation with someone about Star Wars, or even just a fanboy kind of conversation about Star Wars? It's been a long time. Before, what I mean to say is, because we've had a lot of intelligent conversations, even here in the Weekly Wringer. My point is, how many intelligent conversations about Star Wars have I had that didn't quickly devolve into this just bashing of the prequel films? And it's been a long, long time since I've had that. I haven't really had a good conversation about Star Wars that didn't just immediately go to that in a long time. And I think the reason why is because, as Drastic points out, the 80s and 90s were very kind to Star Wars, right? The franchise was as strong as could be in the 90s. I think that is undeniable. But what is up for question here is how the 2000s and now into the 2010s, how healthy is the Star Wars franchise? Obviously, healthy is a general relative term. Healthy in terms of financially, it's extremely healthy. Healthy in terms of the way that the fan base is kicking it around, probably not so much. And, I just thought that was an interesting point. I would like to sit down with many of you, or any of my friends, and talk about Star Wars in a way that didn't involve just jumping right onto the prequel bashing, because that's inevitably where things go, right? And I think, that's something to ponder, folks. Think about that over the course of the next week. I challenge you all. Think about that idea. It's impossible to have that kind of a conversation about Star Wars. And you know what I'm talking about. The kind that we all used to have when we were kids, when we'd be, sleepovers, and you're talking with your friends about, hey, Boba Fett is the best character, or whatever, right? You come up with these all kinds of weird little conversations to have. Now they're just so ruined. Like, who wants to talk about Boba Fett anymore, right? Boba Fett was so awesome in the first 3 movies, and now with the prequels, he's kind of ruined. Does anybody else feel that way? I kind of feel that way. Anyway, so, so I agree, Drastic. I think it's